Hey guys, what's up? What's going on? This is another another podcast. Is it crazy or is it God? With me and my wife, Faith. We just want to talk about the Bible, and we want people to read it more. And you're gonna go through this journey with us. And I think last week we were on the Book of Job, which is very interesting. There's a lot of stuff going on in the Book of Job. So I first want to start off. I like starting off our shows. I'm gonna ask my wife how was her week. Even though we live with each other, we're stuck in the house. It's still good to ask that question, guys. Okay?
You said stuck in the house. You stuck in the house with me?
No, I mean everybody.
I'm just messing around. No, I get it. I'm just messing around. Yeah. So, how's my week? My week was good. My week was great. I had a busier week than most weeks, but I'm just grateful, especially as we're in Job. I have to be grateful. I had made a reference earlier about how a lot of times we just take our health for granted. And reading some of this stuff, you had said he's going through it physically, mentally, and emotionally. And really, that's all we have as humans. Like, there's not another realm that I can think of right now. So, just with that said, I think that kind of sums up what I'm grateful for, because as we're reading this, it makes me realize whenever I am sick or maybe have cramps or something, I think back to like, oh man, I was fine last week. I wasn't feeling this pain last week and I didn't even appreciate it, right? So as we're watching or we're reading him go through this trial, it just reminds me that you're not really having a bad life, right? So, or a bad time. So I had a good week. I mean, it was like I said, it was busy at work. I had some regular life stuff, but I mean, I'm blessed. I feel good. So that's how my week was. How was your week?
Oh, it was interesting. So, okay, waking up early, guys. I'm still.
Mm-hmm.
Well, listen. This week I learned to. I guess this is something I have to deal with, but giving myself some grace. Today I slept until 8. Some people's like, oh man, yeah, that's sleeping into me because I push myself really hard and I'm trying to really get this waking up early. I'm not gonna tell you the time because you're gonna call me crazy, but we're honest here. So I wake up around 3, try to shoot for 3:45, but I've been waking up closer this week than I was last week to 3:45, and I've been having more energy in the morning. I work out. Um, well, the first thing is I don't have my cell phone on me. For I don't know. I don't watch TV or social media probably till like if I have to post a show. I have another podcast called Fourth Quarter. The Fourth Quarter Matters. Um, like, comment, subscribe there too. Listen, I can promote
Go ahead, plug it.
I can promote my own show. So unless it's dealing with that, I'll listen to sports commentary. But I don't really tap into my phone probably till around 7 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's 3 hours on my phone, and I try to connect to God. But this week work was busy,
Mm-hmm.
but I had to realize, especially today, where I'm like a specialist at my work in this new role I've been doing since COVID, which is pretty cool. But it's faster pace
Yeah.
than what I was previously doing, and it's only a couple of us. But then I have to realize that being a specialist, you have to be grateful because they're always going to need you. I mean, I'm just saying, like,
Right.
and not to say that I'm not doing a great job, but sometimes, especially when you're working, it's good to be called upon or needed. And I might have to work that out. It's probably better for God to do it. But then relating to what Job is going through is, you complaining about practice? Jeez, man. You
Yeah.
need to, yeah, what are we doing here? So you have a job, you have a loving wife, you both our cars work fine. We have a warm house and groceries. So it's like you gotta pay attention and be grateful for
what you got.
what you got, where you're living at. Because Job is going through it.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up the job thing because I think a lot of people consider themselves, that's where they suffer the most. I think if we're talking about where you have your trials and tribulations, a lot of times the misery of your life kind of happens with your work, right? Either you're stressed out, you're overworked, you're underpaid. I feel like people have life instances that they're suffering through too, but most of the sort of, I won't say complaints, but most of the turmoil that I talk to my friends and family about has to do with work. It's not really lots to do with life. I mean, sometimes relationships and stuff, but so that's interesting because it's relatable to what Job is going through. It's like if you feel like you're suffering in any way, certainly you're probably not suffering like Job is, but you can relate in that way wherever you feel you're suffering. Also, full transparency here because you have mentioned your morning routine, and I'm trying to get where James is, though I've been waking up a little earlier than I was before. I'm definitely not on James's level yet. I don't know what time I typically wake up. It's here and there, maybe around 6. The thing about me is I'll wake up and I won't get up. I'll just do the thing that he's not doing. I'll be on my phone. I'm listening to the news. Yeah,
you be up at 5.
I listen to the news. I'm on my phone. I'm looking at stuff. I'm Googling stuff. I'm on Instagram looking at planners and bullet journal spreads. And then I'll sometimes roll over and go back to bed. And because this week was so busy at work, I had one night where I stayed up into the hours of the night just trying to complete this project because it was not due the next day, but it was my piece would have held up the next piece. That was Tuesday night.
Tuesday night? Okay.
So my piece would have held up the next piece that somebody else needed to do. So I just felt like, and then I was in the mode to do it. I was motivated to do it. So I was like, I'm just going to stay up until I get tired. And so I did that. And it was probably 3:00 in the morning until I went to bed, but I got the work done. But I wanted to mention that because through this journey of our reading, right, it's not going to be all pretty. And sometimes, so last week, we had 2 days where we didn't read. The first day we got up and we had the intention to read, and then we ended up having a 35-minute conversation, and then it was time to get ready for work. Yep. And then the following day, I think was the day that I had stayed, I don't remember. But the following day, I think maybe even I had to go into the office or something like that, but we didn't read that day either.
That was the day you stayed up late, but then you had to get up early and go in. Like you stayed up late, and then you were up like... Well, I gotta get in the office. I think you were up.
Well, I'm saying all that to say,
like you were grinding.
I'm saying all that to say it's not necessarily the easiest thing. And so if you find yourself struggling, like, oh, I can't commit to reading for 45 minutes every day. We try to keep it to 30 minutes, but we read out loud and discuss at the same time. So we are right around about 45 minutes, between 40 and 45 minutes with our reading. But we just adjusted and we added in an extra day because we're reading 4 days a week. That's our reading plan. Yep. And we're not even following the reading plan to the T. It's a read the Bible in a year. We would like to do that, but we're not necessarily line by line on track. But we're just doing what we can do, right? And so those 2 days that kind of threw us off track, we just made the time and made up for it. So just to mention that, because it's not like you're going to just do this, and if you're serious about it, then you're going to... It's like, look, we're living life, and so you sometimes have to make adjustments, and if you find yourself wondering where you can find the time to read, you can find the time to read, even if it's like 10 or 15 minutes. You can find the time to read a little bit, and maybe it's better that way because you can kind of absorb that piece and then have that sit on your brain and in your spirit and work with you. But it's not like it's all easy and clean cut, but it's doable. And sometimes you have to make adjustments, but I just wanted to bring that up. So, sorry.
No, yeah, and then that goes with, I was listening to, shout out Pastor Sharif from United Baptist, and he was just like, allow yourself some grace, man. So, I mean, sometimes that's life, and life happens, but you gotta allow yourself some grace. We're reading the Bible, so, and life happens. So
yeah, and you just keep going.
Keep going. As long as you're consistent. Oh man, we read the Bible 4 days instead of 5. Like, come on, man. Read the Bible 3 days instead of 4. That's okay. Think about just building upon that. Because previously we weren't reading the Bible in the morning. So man, listen. We're reading the Bible in the morning before we go off and do work. It's the best way to start your day.
It's beneficial to me.
Yeah.
I'll say that firsthand.
It's other things that help, but that helps instrumentally because you'll relate stuff that is happening to you during the day that you read in the Bible or previously read, like, okay. No. You should start understanding God a little bit more. We'll get into that a little bit later. All right, so I think this week was 21 through 31.
Yes, we read 21 through 31 this week. Job chapters 21 through 31. And it was a doozy.
Because we did up to 20. Yeah. All right, yeah.
Yeah, because I highlighted in green this week. That's how I know. Because I highlighted in orange last week. So this is green, 21 to 31. Okay.
So, let's see. Okay. So, we have this weekly guide that we use. Shout out to teachsundayschool.com where it has the 365 daily Bible reading plan. That's what we're going by. And they have these questions, which each Bible verses I think we should go over and then discuss. So Job 21 to 23.
Mm-hmm.
It says, what do you think Job is most frustrated at this point?
Right. And so my answer to that is, okay, just a quick little touch on what the word is. In 21, Job was answering Zophar. So we ended on 20 the last time we came to you. And Zophar was wilding, calling him wicked, calling his friend. Meanwhile, they're supposed to be there comforting. We already went over that. And in that study Bible, the chronological life application study Bible, there was a mention of sort of like the customs at the time. It's right there in this paragraph. So they basically were saying how in the culture, in the Jewish culture, right? Is that what it's
Jewish old tradition?
Okay, so here's what would happen. And I looked up, there's still it's called sitting Shiva or sitting Shiva, which I'm not sure if I am pronouncing correctly, but it's kind of similar to this, where when somebody passes away, the custom is to, I hope I don't get this wrong, but kind of sit with the family. As a friend of the family, you come and sit with the family for, I think it's a 7-day period, not all, 24/7, but there's an observation of loss, of mourning. So we see that, I don't know if this is where it came from or if that was just a standing tradition. Mm-hmm. They came, remember, and they sat with him in silence for 7 days, his friends. And these were considered to be wise men too. I don't want to do that. That's mean. It's wrong. I can't be judging them.
It's all good.
They were considered to be wise men. Yes. Also, they weren't just the regular guys, and they weren't like his neighbors. They came from different lands and cities. But what was interesting with this study Bible mentioned is that you sit in silence until the person who's in mourning speaks. And when that person who is suffering speaks, then other people are allowed to speak. And what they do is they take turns sort of like regurgitating, repeating what they think back. And it reminds me of, I have this standing call with one of my good friends where we kind of go over our week and go over our lives and what we're talking about and stuff. And so whenever one of us is going through something, she was telling me some of her struggles, and I'm sitting there listening to her because I want to know. At one point she was like, oh, I'm boring you. I was like, no, I really want to know. So as she was describing like the situation, she was also giving me some details, and just as a acknowledgement, like I was kind of repeating it back to her to make sure I understood it correctly, like, oh, so you're saying this and this and this is happening and that's causing this. And she was like able to say yes, that's exactly right. There's something about that exchange between friends that is somewhat soothing. Even though you're still going through the issue, it's like someone understands you, right? So I think that's kind of what I got from that whole tradition of sitting in silence, and then when the person speaks, you kind of are acknowledging their pain and their struggle, and you're saying, oh, this is what you're going through. So that's what it seems like. Now, okay, that's not what's happening here, though, in Job 21. Because in Job 20, Zophar was calling Job wicked. In 2027, he says the heavens will reveal his wickedness and guilt. And he's kind of describing the wicked, and as if to imply that you must be one of them since you're going through this suffering. So when Job responds in chapter 21, this struck me too. He says, listen carefully to my speech and let this be the consolation, right? It's almost like he's like, just listen, hear me out here, right? After I've spoken, you can continue to mock me. So it's almost like he knows that nothing I can say will change your mind, but just listen to me, right? Hear the words that are coming out of my mouth. I mean, look, there is some sarcasm in this part of the Bible, which was refreshing, because I was like, oh wow, that's funny. But so with Job accusing him of being wicked, with Zophar accusing Job of being wicked, Job is coming back and saying, well, this is what the wicked do, but they still enjoy the fruits of life, right? They say in 21:14, they say to God, depart from us, we do not desire the knowledge of your ways. So he's saying, look, if you're telling me I'm going through this because I'm wicked, you're calling me wicked, look at the other wicked people that we know to be wicked, that you have proof of being wicked, and look at how they're not going through this. So essentially your argument is moot, because that's not what's happening here. If everything you're saying is like science and math and it's proven to be true, then it doesn't work the other way, right? We have seen people come to great power and be wicked, and to us, for our eyes, we're not seeing them have this kind of suffering. I mean, I'm not trying to call nobody wicked present day, but I mean, we have some people in mind that you could think of, even you out there. Think of somebody who you just know isn't necessarily doing the right thing, and they're not necessarily suffering, right? They're going through their life. They get to say whatever they want to say, do whatever they want to do. And to us, it looks like they're not suffering. So that's Job's point in this one. And he was saying in 21:19, you say God stores away the punishment of man's wickedness for his children. Because that was another thing that I took issue with. Zophar brought Job's kids into it. Now, we know that Job lost all 10 of his kids in that first part, right? So it's like, why are you going to bring that up? That's a rule. Look, if they had traditions, we have traditions. You do not bring people's kids into conversations. It was like, especially if they passed. So I just thought that was disrespectful. But at the same time, these men were considered to be wise.
They were friends,
So I think the thing that stuck out to me the most was that Job is taking up for himself, and he's saying your argument doesn't apply here, because if you're saying this is how the wicked are treated, that's not how and you're saying I'm wicked and that's why I'm being treated this way. Why aren't the other wicked people, right? He's not another wicked person, but he's making the point that if that were the case, then all the wicked people will be going through probably much worse.
So I definitely for that 21:23. So Job is number one responding of how his friends are reacting to him, right? So 2 is 21. Job is responding to Zophar. It's like, okay, man. He's talking about how am I wicked, and he's breaking down of what happened to wicked people, and how. Listen, guys. Sometimes this is not our place to look how other people succeed. And Job's question that some people that are wicked are successful. We don't look into that. It's not our place. Alright, so that's another lesson I got out of Job, and go into that later. So that's what Job is saying. And in 22, Eliphaz comes back and says, I don't care what you're saying. You're wicked. He's telling Job, listen, you know I have sinned. And let me tell you, in the study Bible that we have, shout out, I'm going to put it in the channel, man. Chronological Application Study Bible. It's pretty good. And this is by Tyndale. It's good, right? So it right here it breaks down each reasoning of their friend. So Eliphaz is saying Job is suffering because he sinned. Bildad is saying Job won't admit that he sinned. And Zophar saying that he deserves even more suffering than he's experienced. And these are his friends, man. They're accusing him crazy. So 22, Eliphaz is saying like, look, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. He's explaining to Job of what he didn't do, and this is why, which has caused him to sin, and this is why all these things are happening to him. And then 23, Job's once again having to come back and say, hey, like, God is righteous, right? And he turned to God at that point because he's saying God is righteous in all his judgments.
Yeah.
So he's saying, well, wait a minute. Once again, you have to remember the time we're in. If you are wicked or sinned, you're going to suffer because you're not doing right.
Yeah, that's what they think. Right.
This is the thinking of the time. And Job's like, that's not the case. God's judgment is God's judgment. Because, it doesn't matter if you're righteous, you could still suffer.
And look, in 22:21, this is where Eliphaz was speaking. I just wanted to jump back for a second. He accused Job of specific things. You've not given water to the weary to drink. You withheld bread from the hungry, which Job later kind of like takes a stance on some of these accusations, but these are specific things. And I'm wondering, did you see that, or are you just making this up? That is one of my number one, personally, that is one of my number one sort of like frustrations when people lie on me. Oh my gosh, it just makes my blood boil. That's just not, those are not my most Christian moments. When people lie on me, when somebody's saying that they saw something that they did, that never happened, it's like, not only do I want to prove them wrong, but it's just wrong that I'm even having to prove you wrong because you know good and well that's not what happened. So, sorry, I went there. But here's the thing. When he ends towards the end of that chapter in 22:21, he suggests that you should, telling Job, you should submit yourself to God, right? And you'll be at peace, right? So he's basically saying, just, repent and for all the stuff that I just mentioned that you did, and you'll be fine, right? But it's like, how can you repent for something that is not true? Yeah. So then Job says in 23, this struck me. Oh that I knew where I might find him, that I might even come to his seat. I would present my cause before him. And this is kind of like him saying, yes, take me to court, right? I do want to present my case. You're accusing me of this, right? I would love to go and discuss. Yes, let's discuss this. Like, let's bring the proof. I would love to go and counsel. I would love to seek God's presence and have him tell me what I did wrong, because there's from his recollection, there's nothing. So it's just an unfortunate situation because you got to remember, not only is he having this like sort of heated discussion with the people who he considers to be his friends who are there to comfort him, but he's also in agonizing pain. He's terrorized by his dreams. He has all of these things happening with his body. His skin is turning colors and he's got boils and stuff. He lost his loved one, so he's in emotional pain.
His wife turned his back on him.
Oh my gosh.
So it's tough.
It's a lot of stuff that's happening is he can't wake up from, and then this. So he's having to prove himself, and that's even one thing. It's a lot. It's a lot happening here, and I wonder. No, I don't wonder. Let me not even say. But I just know that I wouldn't have held on to so many righteous ways that Job did. He is really truly being tested in this moment. Right? He's like almost being kicked while he's down. You said that.
Oh, that's
before.
yeah,
we're getting
that's
there.
later.
Okay.
That's
So okay, so that was the answer to your question. I'm sorry. You said, what do I think Job is most frustrated? Yeah. Probably that last thing. Number one, he's being lied on, and number two, he's being lied on, and he knows he didn't do anything wrong, and number two is like, I'm going through all this and I still have to defend myself against to my friends. So I think that's probably what he's most frustrated about.
Yeah. All right. Now, we're going to go through 24 to 28.
Okay.
This is a very interesting part because it's a lot going on. And it gets a little deep. This is when Job is responding to his friend's advice. And the question is, what part of the exchanges strikes you most deeply and why?
And this is in 24 through
28.
Okay. There's so many things.
You said a compelling thing earlier. Now remember, his friends are still... his friends are still accusing him once again. 26, he responds to Bildad in sarcasm. 27, he's saying that...
okay, there's a couple of things. I don't think I said this earlier, but it was something that during my studies that keeps coming across to me that I want to touch on. So then a couple of things. I know it's what strikes you most. Number one is that through all of this, he says in 27... 3. As long as my life is within me and the breath of God is still in my nostrils, my lips will not speak unjustly, nor will my tongue utter deceit. So he's saying that he's not going to lie, but he's also still believing in God. That definitely strikes me. There's another thing that I didn't mention earlier that, like I said, is really kind of coming, because I do my little memory verses or whatever too, and this one thing keeps coming up in different places, which is the refinement of gold.
Yeah.
Right? So in 28:1, he mentions a place where they refine gold. Surely there is a mine for silver and a place where they refine gold. And he also mentions it, I feel like a little later, in 28:17. Where he says gold and glass cannot equal wisdom. So that's a whole bar right there, right? Because a lot of people feel like, oh, as long as I'm rich, I'm good, right? I might not even need to really consult with God because I got everything I need. I'm rich. But the fact that he pointed that out, gold and glass cannot equal wisdom, and he was rich, just lets me know, okay, well, he would know, right? But the refinement of gold is so relevant to what Job is going through, because this was before we were reading this, but maybe a week or so ago, I was writing down another verse that had to do with the refinement of gold, and it made me go and just search online, how is gold refined? There's so many steps. And I mean, it comes out and it looks beautiful. It's shiny and it's awesome, but it goes through so many things, dipped in chemicals, ground up, melted. All of this stuff is happening to this gold to make it pure, because there's levels of purity. So I was stricken by that, because you think you're going through something and you really don't know what's ahead. You really don't know what you're being prepared for. And I still don't know exactly how this ends up. I did peek ahead to look for some details, but he is already talking about the refinement of gold, and he's already saying, even though he's suffering and in pain and being berated, he is still like, okay, as long as life is within me and the breath of God is still in my nostrils, my lips will not speak unjustly. He's still not gonna sway off of his morals. Yeah. So that's what I would say to that.
Okay.
That's how I think that.
Yeah. Okay.
What the answer to your question was.
So I'm gonna say that what part of these exchanges most deeply, the first. Okay, so in Job 24, Job is saying that the world is wicked. So his response is like, man, the earth is violent, and I don't have to, you can't compare my situation and call me wicked when there's wicked all around us. And I'm going to go to this verse. Let me tell y'all something about the Bible. Everything is in here, guys. Everything. So it's a Bible verse in 24 where he says
24:12, 24:14, 24:15.
No.
I'm going to jump in here because I don't know if this is what you mean, but you can find it if it's not. The murderer rises at dawn. He kills the poor and the needy, and at night he becomes a thief. The eye of the adulterer waits for the twilight. So that's 24:14 through 15.
Here it is, 24:16.
Mm-hmm.
No, 24:15. Says, the eye of the adulterer waits for the twilight, saying, no eye will see me. He disguises his face. In the dark they break into houses, which they mark themselves in the daytime. This is going back before us, that people were still doing the things we see on the news today.
Yeah.
People doing stuff at night they're not supposed to be doing. Hiding their faces and robbing houses. Like, this is in the Bible, guys. I'm reading it. That struck me like, wow, that's very interesting that
is still happening.
It's still happening to this day. It's not, and we haven't even we've only gotten into Job, and in Genesis and Job, we're still seeing things that are relating to the Bible today. And that's why now I'm going to bring this to a point. Stay with me. So 25, he says that Bildad calls Job wicked again. And Job 26, he responds to Bildad. And then 27, like Faith said, Job is just maintaining his integrity. He's like, I'm still going to remain faithful to God, even though all these things have happened to me. And even though wicked people prosper, that this is not necessarily all the case, because I am faithful to God. After all this is happening, some people, and I'm not going to lie, this is tough.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if this is why I'm reading the Bible now. So if this happens to me, I can just relate to Job, because all these things happen. Sometimes we always ask God, why? Why did you do this? And he could have no part in doing it, but Job just remained faithful to him. I think that stuck out. And then Job 28. This is what Faith was talking about, the gold mining. We said this while we were reading. Everything great that God has made comes from the earth. Everything.
Yeah. Think about how many things we get from the earth.
Everything.
Food.
Everything.
I mean, you could even get water from the earth.
Watch this, guys. This is why gold, silver, diamonds, rubies will always be more prosperous, value more than anything on the earth, because precious metals come. So any dollar that's created by man,
any form of currency, God didn't create currency. God That's a
created.
good point.
He didn't. Man did, because we ate from the.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know that's why we created currency, but you're right. Yeah. Those precious gems and metals will always be more valuable than a paper dollar or even a credit card.
Yes.
So,
but we hope. But now listen, I'm not going to tell you to go throw away your money.
Obviously.
Let's be honest here. I'm just saying that when you read the Bible, we have to understand that some things are valued more, and it's what God has given to us from the ground. Now, here's the mic drop, and this is why Job is so wise. This is one of the reasons why Job is so wise. And Job 28, verse 28, it says this. And when I heard it, it was profound. It says, and to the man Job said, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding. You dropped the mic. Because all the Bible talks about wisdom, but in my this is what I got from it. To fear the Lord is wisdom, in order to fear the Lord, you have to be righteous with Him. You have to pray. You have to read the Bible, right? And you have to do what you Lord says. It's a couple things: being hospitable, being gentle, being kind, being understanding.
Here's the thing: it's all in the Bible.
It's all in the Bible,
right? So it's like you don't have to do anything, but if you create, if you partake, if you have a relationship with God, right, He's going to guide you.
Yep, everything's in the Bible. That's what wisdom is, right? Fearing God, and if you read the Bible, you're gonna fear God.
Yeah, for sure,
hands down, right? And the reason Job did, look what God just did. He did the flood. So that the fear for him is on an all-time high. Two, to depart from evil is understanding. Leave evil alone, you'll understand more. And once again, these lessons to leave evil alone is in the Bible. Right? So that's my deep understanding. That's what I got. And I'm gonna pose a question. We're gonna interact this, and I want y'all to leave comments below on the YouTube channel. And I also want y'all to leave comments in our Facebook group. And the question is, from your perspective, what does Job 28 mean to you? What does fearing the Lord, that is wisdom, and depart from evil is understanding? What does that mean to you? And I just want y'all to leave that in the comments. That's our interactive question. Because it's going to mean something different to everybody. I'm telling you right now. Just give from your... And add a... if you want to, add a life experience in there that you can go by.
Buttercup, sorry. We have a cat, and she's really trying to be on camera.
Yeah.
So... Right. Yeah, okay, that's a great question. Thank you so much for that.
Yep. And now we're at 29 through 31.
All right.
This is considered Job's final defense. And so it says, this is the question: has Job's defense changed since the beginning, or has it grown?
Right. Okay, I can answer that. I think that it has changed. It has evolved. So in the beginning, if we remember, so I remember, because I thought it was peculiar that he wouldn't just fall to his knees and immediately ask God to take these things off his body and take the pain away, right? But I think he was just trying to stay in sort of this space of understanding God. Whatever you take me through, I'm going to go through without, so I'm be a G, right? I ain't going to be no punk. This is what you have for me. This is what I'm taking because you've done so much for me already, right? But what I noticed here is that he finally was reaching out to God. There were several points where he said, I cry to you for help. It was 30-20. I cry to you for help. 30-24, he said, does not one falling and in a heap of ruins stretch out his hand? And then 30-28, he says, I stand up in the assembly and cry out for help. So he's finally asking God for help. So that's different than the beginning. And also, he's getting more specific, right? So in chapter 29, he's kind of going over the good old days when he would go into the city or the city. I'm just making these words up. And people would regard him highly, right? People would, when he walked around, people would treat him like they would hush and they would wait for him to what he has to say. Now, one of the study Bibles, I think the same one, had mentioned that back in the day, they think Job was a magistrate and a council member, so like a judge. So when people were having disputes, they trusted Job to settle the disputes. Like, hey man, come over here and settle this for us, right? Obviously because he was a good guy. So he's going through, Job is, and he's talking about the days of old, like the good old days, like, back in the day, Whenever I would come around, people would stand and rise respectfully. Those ages, I guess the older people respected him. When people heard my name mentioned, they would call me happy and fortunate. I would rescue the poor. Any orphan that need help, I would help them. If somebody had something that I didn't understand, I would investigate before, to make sure that they got justice. So that kind of leans back into him probably being somewhat of a judge. And it was a part-time thing because we know that he had livestock and he had all these things. He had mentioned something about butter and cream, basically saying I was flossing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was being blessed, and that kind of brought me back to another experience of how, just like I mentioned about earlier, about whenever I get sick, I remember, man, I wasn't even sick last week and I didn't even enjoy it. And keeping with the theme of having people suffering on our jobs or what have you, right, as we would tell it, it's this thing where you don't remember how good you had it until you're going through something. And everything is just the seasons turn. Sometimes you're going to have good times, sometimes you're going to have bad times. So when you are in the season of experiencing blessings and fruitfulness, enjoy that, because you just don't know when you might have to go through a trial and tribulation. When you're going through that trial and tribulation, yes, remember that God has been so good to you, right? I'm saying this for myself. I'm not saying this is what you should do. I'm saying this because this is something that I need to remember. Things didn't always used to be as good as they are. So as I sit here and I might complain about something silly, and then I look back and think like, oh, well, I didn't even always have it this good, right? So if I'm saying, oh, I don't like this about my life, and oh, wasn't it better back then? I have to recognize that, well, there were some things that weren't better back then, and God brought me here. So didn't want to take you off topic there, but I think that he definitely is more specific. So his words are changing a little bit because he's kind of going back and saying, oh, well, it used to be like this, and now he thinks he's dying, right? Now he thinks he's never going to be the same again, and that God isn't. He even says it here a couple of times, even though he's not cursing God, he's saying he's become the subject of, so he's become the subject of people's taunting. So people are kicking him while he's down, and even the people who aren't so righteous are kind of like treating him poorly. There's a part, and I don't know if this is to be taken literally or not. They hate me. This is 30:10. They hate me. They stand aloof from me, and they do not refrain from spitting in my face. I would think that might be literal, but I don't know. You just don't know.
And somebody was like,
I mean, yeah, but it's one of those things. So he, at this point, is saying like, he did all this good stuff in the past. He was enjoying it, and now he's in pain, and he's saying God has cast him into the mirror. I don't know how to say that word. And he's become worthless, dust and ashes. And so he is asking God for help at this point. So that's a little different than what he was saying before.
Yeah. So I think what he was saying before, he is more detailed. You're right. Because, so he's saying that he's going over his life, and I wrote down blessed and highly favored, and I know a lot of people say that, and I'll never forget.
Like, how are you? I'm blessed and highly favored.
Listen, I've never said that. Listen.
Well, I haven't said it since.
I haven't. Listen. Shout out to Sharif. We heard a verse.
Shout out to Pastor Sharif.
Pastor Sharif. We heard a verse where he was talking about blessed and highly favored, and had to do with Mary had to do while she was pregnant with Christ, and how she had to go into hiding, and they wanted Christ dead. So, and she was blessed and highly favored. And how she got pregnant without her and her husband. It's a lot going on with that, right? So this is another reason, another example where I think Job was blessed and highly favored.
Right. And that comes with some level of responsibility and suffering. It comes with suffering. When you're blessed and highly favored, it doesn't just mean that you're so great and you're doing so great. It sometimes means you're going to be
go through it.
The brunt of suffering. Like, you're going to be the subject matter.
You're going to be an example.
You're going to be an example.
You're going to be an example. And so Job, that's what
God.
listen. Our saying is, don't take my word for it. Go to the source, read the Bible. But I just think, from my perspective, that's what he's saying. This is where I was, and look what he's going through, and he still hasn't sinned. Now,
Right.
the 30th, I do agree with Job 30. It's the 30th, Job 30, that this is what the term, I believe the term came from this, kicking people while they're down. While Job is going through all this, all the people that he looked out for, all the people that he helped out, they still kicked him while it's down. And that happens to this day.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to help people out. You do something for them. It's so nice. And then they turn around and do something, whether it's talking behind your back, whether it's, um, this happens. I'm gonna say it. Sleeping with your man or whatever,
Mm.
or stealing money from you.
Yeah.
It's just a lot that people do that you look out for them, and you get humiliated when you're in a position that you're still blessed and highly favored, but you're
Oh
everything for the
man.
world has been taken from you, and people are still kicking you and not giving you, not looking out for you like you looked out for them. You know.
It strikes me, and I don't really want to bring up a specific example, but I feel like I have to.
Oh
It
man.
strikes me in a different way too, because it's like, not only are they kicking him while he's down, but it's like they forgot about who he was
Yeah.
before he started suffering. You said this in one of our last discussions. It was all good a week ago. It was all good about a week ago,
All good
right?
about a week ago, guys.
Here's the thing. Job hasn't been this tyrant, or he hasn't been this person who's putting his riches and his wealth and his blessings on high to be like, I'm better than you.
Yeah.
He's always been the guy who's been looking out for people.
Yep.
And the fact that now that he's suffering, not only are people kicking him while he's down, but it's like they forgot who he actually is.
Yeah.
Which is so, I mean, it's so frustrating to me. And I don't want to bring up a specific example, but we're here. It strikes me,
Don't bring names.
okay, sometimes people in the media go through things and they've done good in the past, but as soon as they go through something publicly, it's like people want to just jump in and judge. That could be anybody, right? But it's like, it, it's I guess it's just our nature, but I think it would be great if we could start to look at people who are suffering, or maybe who we see that, oh, they didn't make a great decision there, and kind of look at the whole person and who we've experienced them to be thus far. If they're just always getting into trouble and they're always having a hard time, they should take some looking into themselves. But when you have a person who's trying to do good, and you know this person to be a good person, and they just happen to fall on a mistake or a hard time, it strikes me as odd that we would, in unison, almost, I feel like sometimes in unison, even though I can't speak for everybody, but especially social media is harsh, that people would just gather in droves to be sort of disciplinary on a person. Meanwhile, all of us are going through something. All of us make mistakes. All of us say stuff messed up. All of us do things out of anger or what have you. And then, but when people are sort of on celebrity status or well known, and then they go through something, it's like they're the laughing stock, or they're the, you know what I mean? It's like we forgot all the stuff that they did before that put them in the sort of good person pile. And then I'm saying I try not to do that, even though I am guilty of, well, why would so and so do that, right? Or whatever. But I just think that's a point that I'm going to take from this, is like, it's interesting that not only was he being kicked while he was down, but it's like they forgot who he was, you know? So, sorry.
So, Job 31, it's all good. So, when he defends himself, Eliphaz, he says he definitely gave to the poor, the widowed, and the fatherless. He blessed the poor. He never took, with his high position, he never took advantage.
Mm.
He feared the Lord. He was hospitable, which you need to be, which is something that's mentioned in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And he he did everything that he can. He didn't take from anybody. He was a righteous guy that feared the Lord. He listened. When people had problems, he listened. And reading it, he helped to his ability. Okay, you need this? I got you. And people would be quiet. They would listen to him, take his advice. So that's what 31. Yes, I do, because how his defense changed, I think this time he first it was like no. Now he has to go in depth of explaining himself. And yeah, it has grown. His defense has grown. He's telling us over 3 verses, this is what I've done.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all must have forgot.
Yeah.
So that's why.
And one last thing that I wanted to mention on this 31, when he goes through and says all the things that he did, he's actually asking, right? Have I not done this? Have I not done this right? If I've done this wrong, then please punish me, right? Have I concealed my transgressions like Adam or like other men? Have I feared the great multitude? And then, so he's actually even responding, I think it was
Billadad or Ella. Billadad said something in 25, and Eliphaz said something in 24. I think he's responding to all 3.
Yeah, he's probably responding to all 3. In 31, 35, he says, and this is where it kind of gets interesting. He says, "Oh, that I had one to listen to me." All right. "Let the Almighty answer me." I skipped a line there. "Oh, that I had one to listen to me. Look, here's my signature. Let the Almighty answer me. Let my adversary write out his indictment." So he's basically like, look at all that I've done, right? If I've done something wrong, for sure, show me what it was. But he's getting so specific. And when he says, "Oh, that I had one to listen to me." So at the end of this, the words are Job with his friends are finished. So now we're going to go into a different part when we pick up reading next week. But I think that was kind of the call of, look, it's final. They've gone back and forth and said all their words. Here's what I think. Job's responses, like you said, grew and kind of got more in detail or more in depth. And now he's actually saying, I lay it all on the table.
Yeah, I'm done talking now.
Yeah.
I'm done.
So this is getting more and more interesting. Yeah. I mean, I'm learning a lot about myself through reading this.
Yeah.
Just about how impatient I am sometimes, and how, to be honest and really completely transparent, I kind of understand how his friends, even though, they're not my favorite people so far in the Bible. Yeah, I understand how they must have thought, because this was the norm, right? Yeah. And so, but I think they know in the back of their minds that they're not warranted in saying this stuff, because it's like, he even brought it up, like, prove it. If you're saying I did these things, then show me. So in the place where you're lying about somebody, you're wrong. But I could see how and these were considered to be wise men. So I don't think I don't know that they're necessarily getting something out of accusing him of this stuff, but it was certainly against their customs, because they were supposed to be comforting him and repeating back to him what they thought he was going through, and this is not what they were doing.
Exactly right, because it says in the study Bible, once again, it says that so I read something where it says that what happens, exactly what you're right, Faith, where they were supposed to listen to him and respond, but instead
there it is. The first stuff is to say nothing. If Job's losses were vented, right, his grief, each of the friends took turns attempting to explain Job's agony.
Yeah. So they heard his questions as arrogant claims. So they're not listening. And like right here, it's saying that their advice is one is saying that he's suffering because he sinned.
Mm-hmm.
He won't admit that he sinned.
Which they
and
have no proof
he deserves suffering because he sinned.
Mm.
So they're all saying, how long you'll go like this? Go present your case to God. Get rid of your sins. So they're doing probably what a lot of us do is where they don't listen. And the communication dropped off at some point, and they were like, well, this is what you should do because you sinned. And he's like, well, they're not supposed to go for that. Now, they did listen in silence for 7 days. But what I think what happened was when they got into the dialogue, they assumed. We all know what assume means. Not going to say it. So, go ahead.
No, it's funny. I just had this thought because I brought this thing up earlier about how a lot of us would say our suffering comes from our job. But it's so funny that Job looks like our common word job, right? So his name was Job. But
that's interesting.
It's like when I'm reading it, sometimes I look at it and I see job. And so I think that's kind of hilarious. But that's just one of those weird things.
I have a poll question on Twitter.
And it might be related to what I'm about to talk about now.
Yeah.
As we're reading, there are certain things that I'm finding just logistically that I need to have next to me in order to really get the most out of it. So we were just talking about yesterday after listening to a podcast, like, what are our standard operating procedures, right? So this is funny because what we do is we sit in the morning, we read. When something jumps out at me, I'll highlight. And like I said earlier, I'll use a different color every week just so I can see where I'm at. And so I can see, okay, this is what I read this week. I mean, I'm probably going to, repeat colors as we go through this. There aren't 66 colors of highlighter or even more than that because we're not reading a whole book every time we sit and read. But the thing is this. I have to have a couple of things that help me. So I just wanted to mention those things so that if you're going with us and you're reading along with us, which will be great. That's really what we want you to do. We want you to join our discussion. We want to discuss what you think about what we're reading, right? We want to read together and we want to know what your questions are. Not that we have answers, but maybe we have similar questions. And we just want to have this discussion with you all. But here's what I was going to say. I have to have my highlighter. Any highlighter will do. And I'm not naming any brands or anything like that. But I'm just going to show you a couple of things that I definitely use. I love these 4x6 index cards. Yeah. I use these index cards for notes on questions I have. I'll just write out different questions. And then when I go to look up answers, both in the Bible, Study Bible, and online, using some online resources, I use these cards because it helps me to organize my thoughts. So those 4x6 cards are a must, or 3x5, whatever you have. James actually used something else. I like these little sticky notes because it helps me to mark the pages that I want to go back and look at. So I have, you'll see the highlighter, and then I have the little page markers, and definitely my favorite pen. Yeah. But those are just a few of the items that I find myself reaching for as I'm studying the Bible.
Yeah. Okay. Guys.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Super simplistic. So I use. Oh no, that's not it. I use a regular pen, but most times it's a nice pen. So something like this right here, usually.
Yeah.
Sharpie S Gel. See, that's why I gotta get organized. Can't find my other good one, but I usually use one of these. They're pretty good. Nice pen given to me by my beautiful wife. I didn't know about pens till she's like a mini Staples. Anyway, so I use this too. This is bullet journal.
It's a bullet journal, but it's a thicker journal than most.
Grid paper.
So it has dot grid paper, and I think I just got that from Amazon, but I was very specific about not getting one that has only, like, a lot of bullet journals only have under 150 pages, or some of them have 250 pages, but this one has 300 some odd pages, because I knew he was going to use it for a long time, and you don't want to just be having your notes in several books.
With my terrible handwriting.
Oh.
Well, it's okay, it gets better the more you write. So this is what I do, and I take notes after every chapter. So we do read out loud.
Yes.
Even if you're by yourself, I think reading out loud is good because you get to hear the words.
Yeah.
And I think you understand them more. And sometimes we tell ourselves to stop to I have to read my study notes. And I didn't do this at first. And Faith was like, "Are you understanding that?" And I was like, "No." So then I started reading the in the study Bible. It'll have what's going on in the background of what's being said. And she in her Bible is the Joyce Meyer Bible, so I'm reading out the uh, New King James version. So sometimes I'll look. Mine's a little bit more. It's a lot of old English in here. So I'll
Yeah,
write down.
the version that you're reading,
Yeah.
the translation that you're reading, it's a little harder to understand.
Yeah.
And if you're reading the King James version or the New King James version,
Yeah.
it can be, challenging to understand what they're saying,
Yeah.
which is why I like to read out of this. This is just a Joyce Meyer
Amplified,
edition, but it's an Amplified Bible. And this isn't the only edition of an Amplified Bible you can get, but I just love me some Joyce Meyer.
Yeah.
So, and she has little notes and stuff in here. So the same way his is, it has these breakdowns for the study Bible of, it'll go over the verses that we just read and kind of explain some details that either weren't mentioned, or it'll break down what's happening. So as we read through, you read through, and this happens with a lot of stuff that we read, even articles and books that are written present day. You can read through a whole chapter sometimes and get to the end of the chapter, especially a whole page or a few pages, and just not even remember what you read. I think reading silently is kind of like that because you're in your mind, you're kind of having your own thoughts at the same volume as you're reading, as the information you're taking in. So that's why we like to read out loud, not only because we're reading together, but because it helps to understand. When you read something out loud and you didn't understand it, you're more apt to go back and reread it until you understand it, or just mark down that you didn't understand it and you need to figure it out using other resources. So so those are just a few things.
And also, when I read like Proverbs in silent, I do have an English Standard Version that breaks it down a little bit more simple, so I can read it in silence. Cause sometimes I just want to read a proverb in silence or look up some Bible verses, and I'll use that English Standard Version. So
that's another really good version.
Yeah.
I understand.
So, all right, guys. We're gonna end out on our saying that we always do. Right? Don't take our word for it. Go to the source. Read the Bible.
Yes.
All right. Y'all have a great week. We're out. Peace.